And give us a cue that you started.
It started.
Okay. I apologize to those of you that are new here. I'm gonna need to go. I need to go through this as quickly as possible in order for us to have time to discuss. So I'm not going to have time for like particularly well formulated language. I'm basically just going to read my notes and then finish. So it's going to be fairly fast, as opposed to my other lectures. Okay. Hold on, I've just been. Oh, it's just announcements. Never mind. I was about to start, and then one of the admins added everyone. Okay, now I can begin. The essence of. Okay, are people gonna join like throughout the entire lecture?
People tend to do that. They tend to join as soon as it starts. Let's just start.
Okay. The essence of revolutionary strategy is its long-term character. It is the frame within which we think about how to achieve our goals over the course of a series of activities or struggles, each of which has its own tactics. This is what McNair begins the book with, and its importance cannot be understated. In a world saturated with impatience and short-term solutions from May 68 to Chaz, what does a long-term strategy look like? How does it differ from the so-called movement consisting of sects, despite the fact that they do not move? Uh, a quick balance sheet is drawn up regarding these three key issues. The first is regarding Marx and Engels in the Second International until 1914, for the key reason being that the socialist movement at that time was made up of scattered forces who began to pull themselves together. The second is what McNair asserts to be the defeat of Bolshevism's democratic dictatorship of the proletariat and peasantry, Trotskyism's workers' state, and Luxembourg spontaneity in the period of the Russian Civil War. He supports this claim by citing Marx and Engels' warning against a premature seizure of power. He goes on to say, by choosing to represent the peasantry and other petty proprietors, especially state bureaucrats, the Workers' Party disabled itself from representing the working class, but instead became a sort of collective Bonaparte. It is in this period that the strategic line going from the First International to the Second International and then to the Bolsheviks after World War I was broken in the period of 1918 to 1921. There was no room for a long-term strategy when Soviet Russia was being choked by international capital. The premature seizure of power in the October Revolution forced them to desperately struggle to break the chokehold whatever way they could, with disastrous consequences. So where does this leave Marxists today? Let's find out. Uh, one moment, I need to find what I'm. Here it is. McNair begins this section by citing a program that Marx co-wrote with a French socialist, which says the following. The emancipation of the working class is that of all human beings without distinction of sex or race. The producers can only be free when they are in possession of the means of production: land, factories, ships, banks, credit. There are only two forms under which the means of production can belong to them: the individual form, which has never existed in general state and which is increasingly eliminated by industrial progress, or the collective form, the material and intellectual elements of which are constituted by the very development of capitalist society. As well, that this collective appropriation can arise only from the revolutionary action of the proletariat organized in a distinct political party. End quote. Okay, this is a two-in-one strategy. It is both a strategy for freeing the working class and for freeing humanity. So it is important to note that a Marxist party is nothing more than a party committed to the idea that freedom for the working class and humanity can only be achieved through communism, and that communism can only be achieved via the action of the workers. The Marxist Party is not a group of enlightened leaders united around Trotskyism or what have you. It is just as Marx said in the Communist Manifesto. Communists do not set up any sectarian principles of their own by which to shape and mold the proletarian movement. Now we move on to the next section, the state and the nation. There are two parts of the original Marxist line of strategy not found in that section of the program that I read. Um, Marx acknowledged that while the overthrow of the state should not be the precondition of everything else, compromises to avoid prosecution, a good example being agitation for a republic in the German Empire, which was not included in the SPD program but was done secretly to great success, were acceptable. What was not acceptable, however, was when this compromise in the program for the sake of legality was extended to dependence on the state. The second part not found in the program is that the workers are international and such the socialist movement must be as well. McNair does a great job at clarifying the historic accomplishments of Marx and Engels when he says, all else is tactics, whether it is trade union struggles, elections, illegality, insurrection, street fighting, or guerrilla warfare. Next section, class. This section is the first to address post-Fordham specifically, how 21st century capitalism has not brought back family production like was present in the early days of capitalism, but has created employment in small workplaces, unlike that of the factory. This necessitates that we cannot organize based on the workplace, but we must organize geographically. If we cannot find concentrations of workers in the factory, then we must find them where they live. Another implication of this is that workers must embrace the unemployed and that workers' organizations must perform welfare and education functions as an alternative to the dependence on the state that Marx argued against. For instance, this might take the form of community clinics and party-run schools versus Medicare for all and state-subsidized free college. Another lesson to take from this is that the power of the proletariat to withdraw their labor in such as strikes and withdrawing their labor from the workplace is not the key to communism. But the separation of the workers from the means of production results in their status as a universal class, to use Marx's term, and their freedom struggles lead to a human society. It is not their withdrawing of their labor, but it's that they are separated from the means of production. That's the key phrase here. Thus, the socialist movement cannot rely on the democratic dictatorship of the proletariat and peasantry, or the people, or the national movement, or any other abstractions separated from the workers themselves. Next section, the party. Defining the proletariat by separation rather than employment means that employed and unemployed, stayed-at-home parents, the elderly, etc., are all proletarians. The party is the only organization that can forge the unity of the proletariat, given that they are not only in the workplaces, and that they must guide the trade unions into solidarity with the entire workers rather than the occupation that they represent to the bosses. Finally, unity is strength. This is a retreat from the orthodox stance taken by McNair up to this point. He correctly points out that the German Marxists chose to unite with the anti-Marxist Lassalleans on the basis of a program that, while good in many aspects, obscured the differences between them, and that despite Marx being opposed to this, it resulted in the Social Democratic Party of Germany, a Marxist party of 1 million members that built trade unions with twice that, alongside a vibrant network of workers' organizations. It was the gold standard of Marxist parties, including to the Bolsheviks, until the betrayal of World War I. But could this principle of unity at all costs be incorporated into revolutionary strategy internationally? The 1904 Congress of the Second International thought so, and rightfully so at the time, considering the disunited and useless socialist movements in Great Britain, America, and Russia. This very stance, although prior to this Congress, led to the creation of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, or as you might know its majority faction, the Bolsheviks. It was also confirmed in the rapid growth of the Second International after the adoption of this policy and of the aforementioned million-strong SPD. But the workers of the world paid a steep price for this. when the opportunist leaders of these parties were more than happy to throw them into a meat grinder for nothing in return. It would be a mistake to assume this was the result of a Marxist line of thought. The Comintern committed practically the same mistake in 1927 in China, resulting in massacres of Chinese workers and the rise of a fellow by the name of Mao Zedong, who was more than happy to use this opportunity to argue for peasant armies rather than a workers' revolution. However, getting back to the subject at hand, how successfully did the merger that created the SPD overcome the differences between the two distinct groups? This requires a much deeper dive into the SPD and its factions than has been done by the lazily drawn up balance sheets from the Trotskyites and other groups. 3 books and 3 groups specifically must be analyzed. Edward Bernstein's right-wing faction based around evolutionary socialism, Karl Kautsky's centrist and dominant in the Second International until 1914 faction based around his book The Road to Power, and Rosa Luxemburg's left-wing faction based around her book The Mass Strike, the Political Parties and the Trade Unions. Okay, that's the end of the lecture. I told you this was going to be short. I'm going to provide my notes, and we're going to go like point by point here, since you can unmute now. All right, give me a moment. Let's start out with this. Give me one moment, and I'll paste a excerpt of my notes below, and you can discuss. As I just said, you can unmute if you have a microphone.
Oh, sorry, my dog was bothering me. Want to talk about MLs?
I proposed the idea earlier.
Yeah, I saw.
I don't have the notes for that. No
You don't
way I
need
could
notes
do
for
that
that.
right now.
True, true. Would you like to, Miles?
Oh, I mean, it's not gonna be very eloquent.
True, true.
Bruh, I got such a problem, bruh. Fucking tassels on my hoodie, I fucking chew on them. I fucking such a. It's such like, I don't know, it's such like a fucking weird habit. It's fucking cold.
Is there anything State and Rev you wanted to talk about? Because Payne ended up
Wait, what?
turning. Oh,
You say Peyton?
Kyle's taking me over because I don't know how to say this right now.
Matthias, you're fucking quiet as shit.
Said that last time Tayan lectured. Are you interested in talking about State and Rev at all, Annie? Or I mean, where are they?